do your SCE presentation because it's Monday and it's in the morning. So I really appreciate the people who are coming to give support to the students who are scheduled during these slots. I want to remind people to use technology responsibly in the room. If you have a cell phone with you, please put it on like silent so that if it rings, it doesn't disrupt the presentation. I also strongly encourage you to ask questions during the question and answer session at the end. As you know, the presentations are being recorded this term and will be up and available for students to use over the weekend for the revision process, or throughout the weekend, over the weekend for the revision process before the final draft is due on Monday at 2:45, okay? So I wanna make sure that you understand that when you ask good questions and people give good answers, it gives people material that they can integrate into their final draft, and that's really important. Gonzalo, do you have a question? Okay. So I have to get my train of thought again after Gonzalo's fake question. Okay. So I do encourage you to help each other out in that way. I'd like to begin this presentation by saying that I feel like the first time that I really saw this student in terms of what he was bringing to the table was when he read aloud to us in Bohio the essay that he had written for his project, and his description of being underwater in the coral reefs was one of the best pieces of student writing that I've seen yet at Carroll Morgan. I was really excited when you chose to focus on the oceans for your SCE presentation, and I hope more students will do that next year. It's a topic I'm willing to offer extra credit for, so along with infrastructure, I'm willing to offer extra credit for students who will explore the ocean, and I'm sorry that my brother didn't agree to be your advisor, because he would have been a good one too. Thank you so much for being here, Sebastian Carr. Let's clap, let's do it.
Imagine going to your favorite restaurant in Punta Cana, Romana, or maybe Cabarete, just to find out you ran out of fish. This is actually a possible future for the coast of the Dominican Republic. Hello, my name is Sebastian Carr. This term, I researched the fishing industry in the Dominican Republic. The title of my senior presentation is the story of a sinking industry, economy and ecology of the coast of the Dominican Republic. Sustainability is one of the largest requirements now in the 21st century. However, not all industries have achieved a viable method where the resource become a long-term investment. The fishing industry is a prime example of this issue. Common practices deteriorate the recovery of merchandise and leave the industry vulnerable to implode. These practices include bottom trawling and use of poison. The coast of the Dominican Republic rely heavily on fishing. In the past years, exponential decline has been observed in the health of the coral reefs. It is crucial that measures are taken where we reduce the damage done to marine life and begin with nursing procedures. Research shows that constant vigilance over national parks is a priority. The reason being, fishing in illegal areas is a common crime and leads to great harm to the ecosystem. Garrett Hardin, the author of the Tragedy of the Commons, posed the population problem in stark terms. First, I want you all to picture a pasture open to everybody. What do you expect will happen? Obviously, each herdsman will try to keep as much cattle as possible in the pasture. Now, this may have worked because in the past, because tribal wars, poaching, and disease kept the numbers of both men and beasts well below the carrying capacity of the land. But what happens when these numbers exceed the capacity? My presentation focuses on this tragedy, where the oceans represent the commons and the fishermen represents the herdsmen. The current structure of the fishing industry lacks a plan for the future. The destructive tendencies are leading to a total collapse of the fishing economy. And it is important to understand why the industry's current strategy isn't working. The marine biologist Carl Safina best explains it with his research. Between 1970 and 1990, the world's fleet doubled. It is now twice the fishing power needed to catch what the oceans can produce. Consequently, the fishing became an extremely inefficient venture, so loaded with excess killing capacity that 124 billion is spent to catch 70 billion worth of fish. This makes methods like bottom trawling, which work in a larger scale, clearly a superior choice when compared to other methods such as artisanal fishing. The problem encountered by the fishermen is a choice between presently being economically stable or a lower sustainable income that works as a long-term plan. It appears the majority prefers a large amount of income, meanwhile ignoring sustainability. We all know how population is harming the marine wildlife. What we sometimes ignore is how destructive the overfishing is. Dr. Safina claims that waste is not the only issue. Using everything would not solve the biological effects of catching large numbers of young fish, seabird, sea turtles, and mammals. Plucking hard on certain strings in the food web can cause vibrations in other creatures. An ecosystem revolves around balance. By removing such a violent fragment like young fish would collapse the whole system. In the article Overfishing, I found some statistics to help you visualize how destructive this industry is. According to a 2015 report released by the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, climate change and overfishing together have resulted in the loss of half of the ocean fishes since 1970. Most of these fishes are common plates found in restaurants, such as mackerel and bonito. Running out would be a devastating blow for the economy. In order to understand my solution to this issue, I must first clearly differentiate the two most common types of fishing in the Dominican Republic and how they function. Artisanal fishing is the most common method used in the Dominican Republic, since most fishermen come from a lower income class. This picture demonstrates a really common strategy used by Dominican fishermen, which revolves around placing a net with an opening and then enclosing the fish who happen to swim inside. When compared to bottom trawling, the effects of artisanal fishing are negligible, therefore making it a much more viable fishing method when considering the ecological factor. Bottom trawling, the practice of dragging heavily weighted nets across the seafloor and sweep up fish, is the most destructive method of fishing we practice to this day. The marine biologist Joshua Reichert explains that deep sea bottom trawls consist of the nets the size of football fields that can reach down more than a mile beneath the water surface. Weighed down by massive steel doors and often attached to heavy rollers, these nets can weigh more than 5 tons. When dragged across the ocean floor, they crush everything on its path. Reichert also states that because these coral fish and other life are very slow growing, they can take centuries or more to recover, if they do at all. Not only this, but many of the eggs stored by unregulated bottom trawls are of immeasurable biological and ecological value. Scientists calculate that the deep sea contains millions of species along with an entire ecosystem that are found nowhere else on Earth. Many of these have yet to be identified by science, much less assessed for their potential value to people in the form of medicines and other products that help enhance human life. It is important to understand not only the economical value that our oceans provide, but also the other vital factors that can contribute to the well-being of the fishing community. Cyanide is a poison which serves many purposes. Cyanide fishing, on the other hand, was initially developed to stun and capture fish for aquariums and collectors, but it was soon used for catching food fish as well. It is illegal in many countries in which it is practiced, although these laws are often minimally enforced. It works by spreading a white powder carried in a plastic bottle around the corals, which numbs the fish. As seen in this picture, in the little to be contains, you spray like liquid powder, which stuns the fish. Divers now catch reef fish for export by stunning them with cyanide, which kills the corals and that are the fish's habitat. Although it's not incredibly common in this country, it is still noted. In the document Coastal Fisheries of Latin America and the Caribbean by Silvia Salas, research proves that the importance of coastal fisheries becomes evident in countries like the Dominican Republic, which landings from gears and mostly in coastal waters exceed 50% of the total landings for that country. This means over 50% of the fish we consume in restaurants is provided by coastal waters. This is why when national parks and areas where fishing is illegal are created, it can hurt fishermen. If acts are passed, such as the one at our Oceans Conference, where President Obama announced his intent to expand the Pacific Remote Island Marine National Monument from 87,000 to 780,000 square miles, it creates a wonderland for ecology to prosper, but might impose a greater challenge for the fishermen as they have less area to fish. However, disregarding the ecological benefits these protectorates create causes even more harm in the long run. As a local fisherman from the island of Solomon, Adin Bice explains, the authorities have to take control of the situation. We could have a great future, but if they fail, we would witness a great decline of ocean life. In order to find a solution, we must first find balance. Organization and education is a priority in order to reach success. The marine biologist Janet Mateo made a research paper where she concluded which were the most damaging factors in the coast of this country. She claims that the main threats identified in the coastal zone include overfishing, degradation of critical habitat, poorly managed boating, recreational diving, increased tourism, and the stress from coastal development and population growth. Her findings also show that the fragmented and overlapping responsibilities of these public sectors tend to create inefficiency and even confusion in some cases. My proposal to solve this issue is to provide more attention to programs which promote the health of our beaches and for the government to collaborate with these organizations in order to increase efficiency. It is also important to promote artisanal fishing as a better choice by educating the local on the importance of sustainability. We have seen how much interest people show in marine ecology and their eagerness to learn about the topic, such as previous events as the Lionfish Festivals. Currently, the Dominican Republic has many organizations who provide their support with this crisis, the two largest ones being Fundemare and Reef Check NL. These organizations work with projects such as the one Fundemare and the Humane Society International are developing. It's a campaign to promote public participation to protect wildlife in the southeast of the country. Above all, the Española parrot, the hawksbill turtle, and the West Indian manatee. The fishing industry lacks what is most valuable now in modern times: sustainability. As important as fishing is for the coast of the Dominican Republic, we have seen a devastating decline in biodiversity. Acting the system has become a top priority in order to restore the beaches and coasts of this beautiful island.
I know that you have a recreational diving license. In your diving, have you seen the result of the harms that you talk about in your video? Like, have you seen it change?
Yeah, definitely, specifically in La Caleta. Previously, before that was made a national park, that used to be before that was created a national park, way before, a long time ago, for example. I was told that there were huge lobsters everywhere, and there was all the corals. It was beautiful. And then when I went diving there for the first time, it was pretty much dead. There was nothing there. It was one of the most boring experiences I've ever had. But then a few years later, that I went with Sea Savers for one of the festivals, I found once it was created a national park, you could see a few baby lobsters, and it was slowly starting to regenerate. It was a slow process, but it was definitely happening. Yeah.
A few months ago, I went to work at the Lionfish Festival in Bahia. It started in the mud, and we were giving talk to some little fishermen. The children are fishermen, and they seem to know. We were chatting about lionfish and lionfish and fishing problems, and they seem to know all of it. But at the same time, the parents just ignore it. How do you see, do you see maybe the next generation will have a better outlook on fishing? And you just maybe it's just the older fishermen now that are continuing to do those traditional practices?
What I understand is that because the older men, the fishermen that used to fish in the old ocean, in the
I don't know what it's called, but you know that during certain months of the year, fishermen can't fish like lobsters, for example. Wouldn't you say, and I believe that they respect, because I think that they understand that them not fishing lobsters for a certain amount of months will help them like in the future. Maybe you want to fish more lobsters. Wouldn't you say that implementing that for like all types of fishing, like having different fishing seasons, would help?
I definitely agree with you. I feel like that's part of the balance that I was talking about, where we can't just completely stop fishermen from fishing in order to help the ecology, because that would ruin the economy. But we can't just ignore the ecology, because then it ends up ruining the economy as well. So I feel like finding a balance where we find moments to fish, for example, lobster that you explained, is definitely really important. Now, one of the things that is also really important is making sure those rules are being like enforced, because even one person, like one fisherman in the boat, can catch, I don't know how many lobsters. He can catch over 50 lobsters if he has enough time. And if he's like, especially if he doesn't have anyone up against him, if he doesn't have any competition, he can just go at it and get up all he can. So yeah, I definitely feel that's a good strategy, but I feel like we have to enforce that really well as well.
Kind of following up on your question, because you mentioned the lobster, and there's also other fish like parrotfish and so on, fish. And a big part of that is just because of tourists. We have a tourist-based economy, especially along the coastal areas, and people come in and they're demanding certain types of fish. So a lot of it is a supply-demand problem. What other, aside from like the fishermen, would there be anything that you would propose to deal with the demand side, and education?
I feel that, or I believe that that's the demand. For example, when the project that was like promoting that the stop consuming of parrotfish was the lionfish festivals and the lionfish campaign, which was to stop killing the parrotfish and start eating the lionfish. And I found that to be a really good strategy, because you're not telling them like, oh no, you can't eat this anymore. You're giving them an alternative. You're like giving them a solution to. You can't just tell them not to do something. You have to give them like an alternative to. I feel like that was a good strategy that they used in order to reduce the demand for parrotfish, introducing a new plate to the 12 restaurants, which is pretty good. We should all try it. Lionfish.
What's the current market price of parrotfish on the market in the DR right now?
I can't tell you an exact number, but it should be, I can tell you that it should be a little bit more expensive than it used to, because again, they have tried to diminish how much, and I know that's one of the strategies they use. They increased a little bit the price.
Okay, what's the current market price of lionfish on the market right now?
Well, since lionfish you have to catch it with harpoons, like you can't just, and they're really hard to handle. You need like special net that's made out of plastic to place the line fish in. It requires much more work to catch the lionfish, so it's not as cheap.
Okay, so my two questions lead to a third question, which is this: you're recommending educating fishermen about ecological damage, and as Gabby pointed out, the fishing community actually knows a lot about the ecology of the sea. They observe it firsthand, yet they continue to fish. So my point is that that's about market economics, right? How are these people going to make a living if the fishing industry crashes? But on the other hand, how are they going to listen to what you say about education if they're trying to put food on the table?
Yeah, that's one of the points I mentioned, that the majority is choosing large amounts of like quick income rather than having like a long-term plan. And I feel that that's one of the biggest reasons. Like, they want food on their plate and they want more money. Like, they don't understand how much, like, they're not gonna know what they have until they lose it. Is kind of where I'm going with this. And I feel like those who still are still like opposing to like find a more sustainable way of fishing, like artisanal fishing, and they're rather looking for money. They're gonna experience, they're gonna see the crash, and they're probably gonna regret it. But again, it's really hard to stop them, because unless the government makes it illegal to do these kinds of things, they have all the right to fish all the fish they want.
Is it viable to provide people with monetary compensation for working in restoration during the off season?
I feel like with the money that we spend, as I mentioned in one of my quotes, that we spend way more money on catching the fish that we get from the actual fish. And it's one of the things I found was because of the subsidies, fuel tax, and all of that it's possible that's why we're still, that's why the fishing economy is still working, because we have so many things to keep the fishing going. And I feel like if we reduce those subsidies and maybe give them to them, while they're on their off season, I feel like that could help them. And that's
Any other questions? Do you start the platform? Okay, you guys, the next